Great defeaters, new and old, welcome back to another riveting episode of The Breakdown with your host, BaseDaKID. Now, as you can see, I'm by myself tonight. Tony's not feeling well, and rather than try and draft in someone else, I thought, let me see if I can handle things on my own. What's the worst that could happen? I mean, I might get us cancelled, but at this point in time, we've had a good run. So if this is the end, hey, at least you get your Tuesday nights back. But yeah, thank everyone who has joined in so far. It looks like there's quite a few of you been in the chat. I can see there's quite a few people watching live at the moment. For those of you who have given up your time to not watch the football, I appreciate you as well. And for those of you who are doing both, doing the dual screen thing, try not to get too agitated at either me or the results. I mean, it is what it is. To all the Arsenal fans out there, I mean, look, had a little draw earlier, but as you guys is already through, probably don't care. Uh, I can see that Real Madrid are currently trailing, missed a penalty. I mean, I don't know what they're playing at, but again, already through. They ain't bothered. Man United seem to be drawing as well. But that is another story for another time. Let's get to some boxing action. Before we do that, we've got to big up the people that are in the chat. So first and foremost, Mr. Philip Ansel was number one today. He was there from that 4 o'clock. So big up to you, Philip. Thank you very much for being in attendance. Ellis Palmer, resident subscriber to the channel. Big ups to you. Good takes on your on Monday Night Smoke yesterday. Big ups and thank you very much for being in attendance. Let's just check what you're saying before I get to the others. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts on this one. Of course, we're gonna get as in depth as I possibly can. Um, the way Haney was setting up his power shots was very creative, guard manipulation. He seemed to stray away from his usual setups of the jab. Showed a lot of development in his game. I mean, I won't disagree. We'll get into that, especially considering that he looked like he tightened up against Southpaws. That's one big thing. You got in the next one. Whether it was superior ring IQ or smart game planning, it was an emphatic victory and a delight to watch. 100%. Bigsy Biggs, big up to you. Thank you very much for being in attendance. And Mr. Jam Down 187, salute to you, my friend. Thank you very much. Philip said, might as well be on your own channel if you're on your own. Well, you know what? On my own channel, I don't get paid. So I might as well be on this one. Fidel Tadal, we've never seen you before. Thank you very much. Says, have you seen Yoka quit boxing? I haven't seen that, but I did suggest it on my video. Actually, no, I don't even think I managed to. No, I think I did bring him up on the weekend. If I didn't, I meant to, but I said he's probably needs to quit. I'll put it on X somewhere, so that's not a surprise if he has quit. Lee Coxton, big up to you. Alexander the Great, thank you very much. And yeah, Jay Lanks as well in the building. Thank you and big ups to you. Right, so let's get started. What I'm gonna do before we actually get into like the main topic, which is like what you guys know, we normally like to have one main at the start, one main at the end. I want to give out some honorable mentions to a couple fights that I don't really have time to talk about, primarily because I didn't really see them, or there was too many fights to go over for the weekend. So if I just get out the list real quick of those, let's see. So first honorable mention is the Lauren Price against what's her name? So is it Sophia Bortot? Uh, yeah, basically just to say that another comfortable performance for Lauren Price. I know that she's kind of highly ranked in the ratings at the moment. Sylvia Bortot, that's the name. I feel like she needs to, if she's going to be vying for world titles next, as she claims, then I feel like the level of competition is going to have to get a little bit tougher, or at least get into some of the proper sort of top 10, top 5 girls at the 147 division. I know it's not that stacked, but yeah, I think she's good enough to get another level of competition moving forward. Uh, Another win for Francesca Hennessy, so shout out to her. Obviously 2-0 now, 1 KO. It was from what I saw, it was a pretty action-packed and fun fight. So congrats. I have to give a very special mention to Cutler versus Egbenike. Now, I wasn't expecting anything from this fight. I wasn't really paying attention to it too much, but it was a very fun fight to watch on a Sunday evening after the footballs ended. Before Crispin and Smith and that. So just another shout out to those. And as you said, Fidel, the other honourable mention was for Tony Yoka and Riyad Mahrez. Obviously, I haven't seen the fight. I know that there's links around, so I will try and see if I can find some. I'm going to see if I can try and find a link to watch that later. But from what I've heard, it was it was probably the right decision, but it was a very close fight, unlike his losses to Carlos Takam and to what's his name, Martin Bakoli, even though those ended up being split decisions. This one apparently was very close, but it is three defeats in a row. And as Fidel said, apparently he has now retired from boxing. It makes perfect sense. He's not the type of guy that wants to be a journeyman. He came in with aspirations of championships. So if he's not able to get those, it is what it is. Okay, so with that being said, first fight I want to talk about. I know the fights that you guys are here for, but let's since I just spoke about a lot of the UK fights, might as well go with Chris Billum Smith against Masteus Masternak. So just before I do that, let me check into the chat. I think there's a couple other people that have Clyde, big ups to you. Evening. Thank you very much for joining. For those who don't know, Clyde is in the boxing group with myself. I've frequently got to tell him the rules of boxing and sanctioning bodies because he likes to ask the same questions over and over again. Sometimes he frustrates me, but he's one of my favorites in there. So big ups to you and thank you very much for tuning in. Um, let's say, oh yeah, Lee. Yes, that's right. Big ups to and congrats to Tony, who he's basically been on a course over the weekend. It was almost supposed to ram like 5 days of work into a 2 day course or something like that. But Tony got through it. He passed the course. So shout out to Tony on that one as well. And big ups to you, man, are done for blessing us with your presence. You haven't been around for a few weeks, so it's nice to see you back in the building. Um, and Alex, yep, you're right. It's hard to come back from 3 losses to mid-level competition. You're totally right. Um, it was journeyman settings after that. So yeah. Okay, yeah, Crispin and Smith versus Mateus Masternak. Now, I think for most people who saw this, I think you will feel that Chris, even though he got the job done and he got quote unquote the stoppage, it wasn't the greatest of performances. He's had much better performances, but as always, he did get hit and he got hit, in my opinion, way too much. Now, when I spoke to him, the last time I spoke to him was about a month ago, a month and a half. He basically said that he doesn't get hit as much as people think. He is able to kind of slip and like sort of roll with a lot of shots as well. But it just obviously looks always like he's in a war, but he doesn't feel like he is. I think the issue might be he may not feel a lot of the punches that actually get through when he is fighting, but they're getting through and they are causing damage. And I think that's the biggest problem. It's like a lot of the time is, some people say, oh, the punches ain't hurting. So a boxer thinks they can just walk through the punches to get their own work off. But even while they're walking through, they could still be losing the round until eventually they win. Chris is definitely seems like that kind of character. But in this fight, for instance, in the first round, he did well. He established his jab well. He sort of established his physicality as well. You could see that he was the physically bigger and stronger guy. Um, Mateus Masternak was trying to figure out the range and figure out how he was going to get to figure out how he was actually going to get that jab and get to Chris. You could tell that Chris had the longer arms, just the longer reach. But the one problem that Chris had is that he fights very upright. And not only does he fight very upright, he doesn't necessarily use his tall stature to his advantage. And a lot of the time, when you see him edging forward, I didn't actually notice this properly until this fight. Maybe because a lot of the time he is fighting people that are either the same height as him or a little bit taller. But he's had he leans back on his back foot, so he's upright, but he's back and he's angular as well, almost like that very old school gentleman style of fighting where they have the fists up like that, and but it's always like very very far back, and because of that you can kind of tell that when he then gets hit, it's not, he can't then sort of almost catch and counter because he's always like being pushed back by the shot. So you'll see that he tends to fall in quite a lot when he's, when he's basically trying to take his shot because he's too far out of range. And that's why a lot of the time you find he finds himself on the inside of the clinch, and having to obviously try and work and rip shots to the body. He very rarely does any good work from the outside or even the mid range. A lot of it happens to be in close because he doesn't seem to know how to time his distance correctly. And that's kind of one of the things that we saw when he faced Mateus Masternak, someone that had some movement and was, even though maybe didn't have the strongest of punches, but he had enough of a snap on his punch and a very good solid jab. Everything was just getting through, and Chris couldn't find himself in range to close it. And I had it 4-1 up after 5 rounds. I gave Chris the first round. After that, Masternak, I gave him the next four. I gave him the sixth. The sixth was a slightly better round for Chris Smith, but it was still a Masternak round as far as I'm concerned. Again, Chris had to fall into the pocket, tried to get rough and dirty on the inside. You can see Masternak, looking at the ref like, well, what do you want me to do? He's holding me on the inside. Um, but what I will say is in the seventh round, Chris finally made a slight adjustment where he actually started to use his jab. He was trying to then sort of double jab his way in and then dip underneath Masternak's lead hand. And when he was able to do that, that's when he was actually able to almost get his head off center line on the chest. That's when he was also able to then start pushing Masternak back towards the ropes. And as we saw, that's when he started to work away to the body. Now, a comment just came in from you, man, the done for said, did Chris Smith know about the rib injury? Was the idea trying to target that area? In my opinion, I don't know if he knew about it properly, but I think Shane McGuigan did tell him, look, I think he's got a problem with his ribs. Like, you need to target the body. Now, Shane must have known because I saw from the weigh-in the day before that on Masternak's left side, it looked like his ribs were protruding past his pec muscles, and his abdominal muscles, sorry, not his pecs. But you could see that one side, the ribs and the lining was clearly sticking out further than his six pack. And I looked at that and I was like, that seems odd. Is he got an injury there? Has he got like a broken or a bruised rib or something? It to me it looks wrong. I was like, but he's here, so it must be okay. But then I'm thinking to myself, has he ever looked like that before? So I even started to go back through other footage just to see if I could find out if that's how it looks normally. And I didn't really get through a lot of them, but I was just looking. I was like, no, there's something doesn't look right there. But maybe he had been functioning with it and it was fine. It might have been a bit bruised. Maybe he got like a little pain killing injection. Sometimes you do that. Um, but ultimately, when Chris started to actually get to the body and started to sort of rip those shots, they weren't the heaviest of shots, but if you've got bruised ribs, you don't need the hardest of shots for that to start hurting. And as we know, if it's fragile or it's a little bit frail or brittle at the moment, and considering Masternak is a slightly older guy, any type of impact that you're not prepared for can cause a crack or separation or another severe bruising. And ultimately, he stayed on his stall. He got up a little. He got up tentatively at the start of the eighth, but I think the corner looked at him and He said, "Look, the ribs is not good." And I think the corner just looked to the referee and say, "Yeah, well, we're not going to let him carry on. Not in this case." So, I mean, with that, whether it's a corner retirement or he quit on his stall, however you want to look at it, he felt he couldn't continue. Now, if anyone who saw my video on that, I said that I feel like because he knows ultimately this is like his one world title shot, he will never get another one. I think this is to him just is almost like a box ticking exercise to say I at least challenged for a world title. I finally got one, and if it comes down to it, I feel like he might just try and survive the fight. So to say that he lost on points, but at least to say, he got his world title shot. And I think the world title shot for him was the prize more than actually necessarily getting the victory, because even if he won, I don't know how much longer he was long to stay in the game. But he had been in there for so long and had never had the opportunity. Obviously pulled out of the Jairo Pataya opportunity, at the start of the year because he was approached by Boxer to, they said, well, come out of this one so Richard can take that, but then we'll promise you another world title shot. And that's why he ended up getting this fight before Lawrence Okoli. For those who don't know, basically Boxer owed it to him. And I think there may have been some legal issues or legal, some legal dealings if they didn't honor the agreement that had him sort of pulling out of the Jairo Pataya fight to begin with. So yeah, I always felt that if it came down to it, not necessarily I didn't think he would quit or that he wouldn't give it his all. I still think that he was, would have gone on ultimately if he really had to. But I just feel like he knew that at least he can say he went for the world title, and ultimately that was the most important thing to him. So yeah, that's sort of my opinion on it. Obviously, you guys feel free to leave yours in the chat. Lee Coxton says, yep, Billum Smith too upright, no head movement. React poor rips for him. I mean, it's a valid comment. Um, Alex said the weigh-in made me question if he'd had an injury or a bad weight cut. There you go. So it wasn't just me that obviously noticed this initially, but hey, right. So moving on from that, gonna go through. Actually, let's talk about the one other fight on that card that I'll want to give a little bit of comment to, and that was Ben Whitaker versus Steven Drejaj. Now, you get a lot of people online who are basically are questioning, sort of Ben Whitaker and the whole, the showboating and all that stuff. Now, from what I've been told, that's pretty much his character anyway. But I've always maintained I actually don't mind the showboating. I quite like it. You know me. I think that I think it's fun. I think it's entertaining. The one thing I've always said is if you're not able to do it at world level, then I don't want to see you doing it now. That's the only thing I've always said, because I'm like, because it doesn't look great if you're gonna showboat against a bunch of quote unquote no hopers, but then when you step up to like the big levels, either you can't do it, or that it's going to cause, it might cause you to get caught by a guy that's a lot more technically savvy than the people that you are fighting. So I feel like it's one of those ones. It's almost like them, a parlor trick, or it's like if you're imagine that you got your godchildren or your children, and yeah, you can run faster than them, like when they're 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and maybe nutmeg them and beat them in little dribbling on football. But then as soon as they bust 13, 14, 15, all of a sudden you can't do it no more. It's like, well, you should have just been working on the fundamentals from the start, because you're only doing it because those people, they're clearly not good enough to stop you. I want to see him do it at the world level when he gets there. So I'm happy with it. But if he doesn't do it at that, that's when I will probably have like a critique about it. That's how I kind of see it. But yeah, otherwise, go for it. It is entertaining. The dancing, the drunken master stuff. I'd like it. I just want him to do it consistently, and that's just my issue. If you can't do it consistently, don't do it. And as for you, man, in the comments, you're saying ref shouldn't warn man for showboating too. You are allowed to. That's true. The only thing, you're not obviously allowed to talk and constant communication with your opponent in the ring, but he wasn't doing that. I think the issue, I think the one reason that he actually got warned in the fight for the showboating was because there was one point where he's not looking at his opponent, and he's almost like he's almost got his back turned to him. So the ref's like, you can't do that. You need to be facing your opponent at all times. You have to protect yourself at all times. If you've got your arms down, not looking at him side on, then it basically looks like you're not in a defensive position. You're not able to defend yourself. So I think that's more what he was being pulled up about, as opposed to everything else. But again, it's stuff whereby you live and you learn. The fight itself, I mean, look, it was a virtually a punch perfect performance with the showboating mixed in, with arguably a highlight reel knockout that may make my knockout of the year awards when I do them in about 2 weeks. I'm looking forward to that. I'm gonna wait until after the Inoue fight, but as soon as that fight's over, from the 27th onwards, that's when all the videos are getting recorded. Uh, but I'm looking forward to it. Knockout of the year. female performance of the year, male performance of the year, male fighter of the year, female fighter of the year, and then knockout of the year is an amalgamation. So just whatever the best ones are. And there's a few really good ones that I'm looking forward to. But shout outs to Ben Whitaker. Look, he done his thing. He did it in spectacular, usual Ben Whitaker fashion. Barely got hit. I think he maybe got hit clean once, and even that wasn't clean. It was just it landed. Outside of that, he was in full control. When you step up the levels, that's when it will be interesting to see what kind of happens to him and and everything else. Now, I spoke to October Red about this on her latest video, the her weekend review. If you haven't seen that, please go over there and check that. But I said that I think I'd like him to face Ricky Summers next. I think that would be a good test for him. Don't know if Ricky's active at the moment. He hasn't. He was supposed to fight Anthony Yard, as you know, but he hasn't come back since then. So not sure. But I said if not him, I like the Shaq and Pitters fight. I think that would be a pretty good fight for him. Or Carol the Talma. See if Ben. See if Frank Warren and George and Francis will loan Carol the Talma over to you for a fight. I think those would be good, interesting fights. And yeah, we'll see how that one goes moving forward. But overall, good performance. Okay, now I haven't seen all the fights, but I did actually watch some of the highlights earlier. So really quick, Richard Torres Jr. versus Curtis Harper. Richard got some valuable rounds in the first time that he's gone past, I think, the third round. Say it was an eighth round. He got the eighth round stoppage. I definitely like that work. One set. Philip says, "What about Ben Whitaker and Callum Simpson? They're two different weight classes. Ben's 175, Callum Simpson's 168. So, no, that's not a good matchup at this point in time." But yeah, Richard Torres Jr. Like, I just like his all action style. You don't if you haven't got the stamina, he's the kind of guy that will get to you. He's quite good at moving his head as well. He never really keeps his head on the line, and he's just like a little buzzsaw. Now, I can tell when he starts coming up against much better opponents, longer ranger opponents that have got that snap, he could, come a cropper a little bit, similar to the amateurs. Obviously, we all know what kind of happened to him, in the Olympics and prior to that. But yeah, I mean, he's one of my favorite heavyweights at the moment. I like the all action style. I just like his background, and I like his work ethic as well. The way he trains, it's very sort of old school country boy training, and he's got an engine. Like he reminds me, without the maybe without the enhancements, but he has a very similar work rate to like Jerome Miller. Of sort of like 2017, 2018 Jerome Miller, whereby it's just constant pressure, constant throwing punches. Even when he's tired, like he's still got enough in the tank to keep going. And I really enjoy watching his fights. Xander Zayas, he also got a fifth round KO. Congrats to him. Again, I only saw some of the highlights, so there's nothing I can really speak about, but he's still on his journey. Jahi Tucker got a majority decision draw. I think he was fighting a guy called Vileska. I could be totally wrong about the name, but I know the guy was 13-0. Jahi Tucker was 10-1, but he got a majority decision draw with that one. And Rohel Polanco was on that card as well. He also got a KO victory over Keith Hunter, which is Michael Hunter's younger brother. I actually thought that would be a very difficult fight for Rohel Polanco. I haven't seen it, but again, congrats to him, and a really good win to have on the resume. Definitely, I think it was only Keith's second. That's only his second loss, so that's a pretty good a good name to have on the resume. And then finally, again, I saw the highlights, about 5 minutes of highlights. I haven't been able to watch the full fight. I need to watch it. But Robeisy Ramirez against Rafael Espinoza. That fight from the highlights looked like an amazing fight. Um, Robeisy Ramirez knocked him down, not in the first round, to the point where Rafael Espinoza got up and then fell over again. And I'm surprised because normally, if you get up and then you fall back over, the ref normally will stop the count. It'll just wave the fight off. But no, he's carried on counting, allowed him to get back up. You know, he got himself together, and then the bell rang just in the nick of time. But from then, it looked like he just outworked Robeisy Ramirez for the majority of the fight. Move after that, the two of them traded on the inside. From what I saw, it looked like a brilliant fight all the way to where he basically beat the will out of Robeisy Ramirez in the 12th round. Ramirez goes down. He does manage to get up and beat the count, survives for like 10, 12 seconds at the end of the fight, but that was enough you know, to basically get Rafael Espinoza the belt. I didn't see it coming. I need to watch the fight though, because again, it looks like an amazing fight. And if you have seen it, like, put it in the chat, let me know your thoughts, and I'll put those up in a little while. Um, but yeah, it was a really good showing. Now, with that being said, I want to move over to the zone, and I want to move over to the matchroom card, and I want to start that one off with Beatrice Ferreira against Destiny Jones. Now, anyone who's been and seen me on the breakdown before knows that I like Beatrice Ferreira. I think she's a very solid fighter. Not just that, she's very put together and she's strong, and I like her punch selection, and you can tell that she's got pop in those shots. But this was a fight where, even though she won the majority of the exchanges, she was tested extremely hard in this one. And as a bit of a side note, this is the first one where she had to face a little bit of adversity. She got a cut over the left eye. It looked like there was a slight grazing elbow which started it off, but ultimately there was a big overhand right which caught her on the eyelid, which ended up cutting her, and she had to grip through that. Obviously, had to make sure that it didn't worsen. And congrats to her team, because they actually got that closed up and not bleeding pretty much from the end of that round. But the combination punching, the counter punching, the catching counters from her, and also from Destiny Jones. Destiny wasn't in there to lay down. She didn't get outclassed in the bout. She got out fought. She did get outmaneuvered at times, but she was there. She was game throughout the entire rounds of the fight, all the way up into the ninth. But at that point, you could just start to see the amateur quality and the Olympic pedigree from um, Beatrice Ferreira just taking over and just showing through and showing out. And at this point, you can see Beatrice, like, now she's starting to really get some mustard on those shots. And whereas before you had Destiny was kind of riding some, was able to block some and exchange, she just then started taking those shots cleanly. And it wasn't just the jab, she was getting caught with the overhands, getting caught with the uppercuts, getting caught with the corkscrews. It was just the punches just started coming more and more frequent, and landing with more regularity and more on the sweet spot. And it got to the point where she managed to just break Destiny's resolve. She switched into southpaw, and then she loaded up that left, that straight down the pipe left, boom, which caught Destiny, went down. She hit the ground hard, and the fact that she actually even got up, I got a rate, because she managed to get up and sort of see out the rest of the round. But then after that, the doctor, she gets called over to the doctor in the eighth round, sorry, and he's doing the eye test thing. We can't see what he sees, but she's there. She's like, I'm fine, I'm good to go. And I guess maybe she wasn't following his finger the way he wanted. But then he called to the referee, said, "Yeah, it's over, it's done." Ref waves it off. She's distraught, like, why? Why have you waved it off? Like, I'm fine, I'm here, I'm ready to go. And then you can see how much it meant to her, because she started crying afterwards. She's like, this was my opportunity, and you guys have taken it away from me. I felt bad for her, because she put in a really, really good performance. It was a really strong, really solid performance, and it was a pleasure to watch. The entire fight was a pleasure to watch. I would have liked to see that eighth round, but I can also then possibly see, well, how many of the rounds prior to that did she win? And do you want her to just take another 2 minutes of solid punches? But with that being said, she caused her own damage to Beatrice. Like I said, split her eye open. It's not like she wasn't landing anything. She was very competitive. I feel like they should have allowed her to go out, but ultimately now you got Beatrice at 4-0 with 2 KOs, 50% KO ratio, just like Travis. Big up to her. and she's going to the Olympics now, so she'll be moving on to yeah, she'll be doing the Olympics, I think, next, and then I think after that is when she comes back to boxing full time. Actually, no, I think she's gonna fight one more time next year before the Olympics. So I think she might fight in February or March, but then from then it's gonna be she's gonna focus on the Olympics moving forward, and then after that she'll come back to full time boxing. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out. But yeah, one of my favorites. If you haven't seen that fight, it's on YouTube. It's not even on the live stream. They uploaded the full fight itself. Go and watch it because it was a great fight to watch. Even if you don't like women's boxing, that's a fight you're gonna like. If I go back into the chat for a moment, let's. Okay, so Alex, right, for KO of the year, are we gonna see Clarissa Shields sparring video make? uh, I mean, yeah, that's well, apparently because she didn't get knocked out, or according to it, it was just a knockdown. Maybe we can't really add that, but maybe go in the honorable mention section. Funny you say that, Alex. I've actually got an honorable mention section in this year's because there's a few fights whereby even though that punch didn't end the fight ended pretty much like a couple seconds afterwards, or it wasn't allowed to continue, even when the person got up. So either I can't really call those proper KOs because someone was on their feet, or maybe it was in the corner afterwards. But there are a few that will end up in that. So keep an eye out for that video. Let's see what else have we got here. So Fidel, have you seen Destiny Jones? Yep, that's what we just spoke about. Who's this? Mr. KWX Ben. Thank you for joining. 2 words. Josh Taylor. If Whitaker the real deal, his team will bring him along like Josh Taylor. Bit scary to hear of his niggling injury so young in his career. Also wish he had bigger calves and thighs. Do you know what? His calves ain't too bad in proportion to his body, but I mean, yeah, he maybe could work on his lower half a little more. But that being said, I think if he did that, he wouldn't be able to make light heavyweight. I think his frame at the moment is in proportion for that weight division. If he started to work on his legs a bit more, I think he'd struggle to make it and probably would have to end up getting to cruiser. And that jump, I think, is too big for him, as talented as he may be. Um, Alex, I saw bits of the Ramirez fight, but I wanted to watch Haney program more, so I switched. I mean that was the one to watch. The counter programming didn't necessarily work out. Goes, it's always hard when you're a pro and you know what kind of effort you put in before the fight to have it stopped by someone else just be uh just be so deflating. But I think they saved her from more damage. I mean, I can't disagree. I think that she was fine to continue, but it was the writing on the wall. Maybe if she had got knocked down a few rounds earlier, they might have left it. But because it's the round before and it was a heavy knockdown, it was a flush punch, and it looked like the resistance had just gone. So at that point, maybe you say, you know what, let's leave this one. So I agree with you. But jam down. Am I the only one that's missing the random audio distraction that Tony delivers when Pace is talking? The stream is going too smoothly. uh no comment. Yeah, but big up to you, Jam Dan. All you always good for a laugh. I appreciate you. Thank you very much for tuning in. Okay, moving up. So another women's fight. Let's talk about Ebony Bridges versus Mio Yoshida. Now, I never saw Mio Yoshida's previous fight against Shuri Metcalf, and from what I heard of that fight, even though Metcalf won, it wasn't like it wasn't as wide as the cards made it look out. From what I heard, it was actually a very close nip and tuck fight, and she realistically probably should have got the rub of the green. Now again, because I haven't seen it, I can't really comment. But they said she was unlucky to lose the fight, but it was one of those ones could have gone either way. So I'll give it up to her. It is what it is. But she ended up because she had been the one thing that I then say I think is a bit crazy though is the fact that she then got this opportunity off the back of that defeat rather than the girl who won getting given the opportunity. But I guess maybe because Metcalf was the mandatory, they probably didn't think it was right to have to do the mandatory coming off of their hand injury or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I think it's only really in the women's division that you can actually get a world title shot coming off a defeat unless you were a champion, and the champion sort of coming back and having a rematch. In most of the sanctioning bodies, I know the WBO especially, maybe not the WBC, but actually, to be honest, the IBF with Maris Breedis, I suppose that's also another one. But yeah, you normally the WBO specifically, you don't get a title shot if you're coming off of a defeat unless it's written into a rematch clause of a contract. So interesting. But with this being said, I don't want to spend too much time on this fight. Mio Yoshida basically was able to nullify everything that Ebony Bridges tried to do. Inexplicably, Ebony tried to box and move in the first two rounds. And I couldn't understand why she was doing that. That's not her game, especially against someone that is taller and rangier than she is. To think that you're going to box and move from the outside or try to box your way onto the inside didn't seem smart to me. Like, ultimately, her best bet in any type of fight, especially against someone taller than her, is maybe you do the double jab to step in, but ultimately you go behind that high guard, you know, put your head on the pendulum, try slip, bob, roll, like deflect, get in and start working. But she didn't do that. And it's also weird because I don't understand how this happened, but she was about a good 2 or 3 feet away from Yoshida in those first few rounds, and she's pumping out a jab that can't land. It's not even like it's a rangefinder. You're trying to find the range because she was nowhere near her. Like, there's that's not how you employ a rangefinder. So it kind of at that point goes to show I guess the inexperience in the actual boxing game. Or if you're like even if you're trying to keep the other girl away from you, it looked weird, and I just didn't understand it. But ultimately, from those after those first two rounds, she kind of tried to go back to more what she's used to. But by that time, I feel like the energy had depleted too much, and Mio Yoshida just happened to be better than her on the inside. She was able to tie her up, grip her, like push her back to the ropes, which was really surprising to me. Ebony isn't usually like out fought and out muscled by people in the ring. If a lot of you will remember, she was a former bodybuilder. So she's used to lifting and pushing heavy weight. So for her to, just get bullied around the ring was really strange. But that being said, I didn't know that Yoshida was a former kickboxer. If you know anything about kickboxers, they've always got very strong legs, very strong lower bodies. So maybe she's just naturally used to that power and that and having to sort of muscle and and build up that foundation. But she's also a much smaller woman. She's competed as low as flyweight before. So it was a very strange thing, but you could see Ebony was visibly tired from the third round, and yeah, pretty much from there onwards, she just started once she was getting tired up and pushed around. When she started to try and exchange, she was just getting beat to the punch as well. Just it was very slow, very cumbersome. The legs looked like they were stuck in mud after like the sixth round. Um, Ishida she was just punch perfect. And again, she very rarely got hit. And when she did, she knew how to nullify, how to stop that momentum, get Ebony off center and hit her with those straight punches, those looping punches. She was even able to pivot off her on a couple of times to Ebony's blind side and catch her. If she had more power, I don't know if Ebony would have survived if I'm real, because from the eighth round onwards, she was catching clean shots to the head and it looked like she was being wobbled by every shot. Part of it might have been a balance issue, but you could just see that these shots look like they're stinging. And if she had just a little bit more mustard on those shots, I think Ebony would have hit the deck. And who knows if she would have been able to get up. But she was gasping from the end of the third. So I don't know what kind of conditioning she had done. I don't know how badly that layoff affected her. As I've said numerous times before, I'm sure you guys have heard me say it, especially if you've been on my channel. She's got some artificial weight that she's carrying, which is definitely gonna test the gas tank and cause her to get tired a lot sooner. It's it's almost like basically boxing in a weighted vest. There's a certain weight that your body has naturally, and then when you add additional weight or ankle weights to that, you're gonna get more tired, and that's ultimately basically what we saw. Is just someone that doesn't have the greatest of conditioning and doesn't really look at this instant like she really went through the trenches to get her conditioning up. Maybe she thought this would just be an easy night, 2 3 rounds, get out and then start to work again. But yeah, I don't think the Dave Coldwell Matt link up was a fit going up to North. And if the rumors that I've heard are true, I don't know if that relationship's gonna last. That's pretty much all I will say about that. Um, but yeah, let's just move on from there really quickly. Actually, I want to give the other. I'm gonna give that fight a bit more. So we're gonna move from that one. We're gonna go over to Liam Paro versus Montana Love. Now, I predicted Liam Paro was gonna win this. Montana hasn't necessarily looked ever since he signed the matchroom contract. It's like he's gone backwards. He's regressed. It's almost like the Baranchik fight was the the best that he was ever going to get. And obviously Baranchik wasn't like the greatest of guys. He was on the downslide as well. But it's like he just caught that career best performance, got the contract, and it almost felt as if he wasn't really trying after that. Or okay, well I got the big money contract now. Let's get moving. And then in his last 3 fights, the first fight, no, 4 fights actually. His first matchroom fight, he actually blew the weight. So they had to agree a catch weight with his opponent. I think they had to pay the opponent a little bit extra, which I don't think helped his relationship. So blew the weight in the first fight. Second fight puts on a very lackluster, boring performance against was it Valenzuela? I think it was Valenzuela, and he gets the victory, but the crowd start booing, and it wasn't a good fight for like a main event of the card. Then in his third fight, gets DQ'd for clotheslining Steve Spark over the ropes. Now I still maintain that I think Steve Spark jumped, but regardless, he got DQ'd. He lost, and that was a loss on the record that wasn't there before. All of a sudden, the marquee value goes down. Comes back, supposed to fight Richardson Hitchens, pulls out of that fight, citing an injury, and then Chun Tapeda ends up getting sort of getting put into his place 3 or 4 months down the line. So you could tell at that point it's like he's not really on great terms. It feels like he's not going to be on the best of terms with Matchroom, and the promoter comes back in this one, talks a very big game, and not only does he get beat, he gets brutally knocked down twice in the 6th round and then stopped at the end of the 6th. Um, I thought it was going to go points, and I thought that it would be competitive early on, which it was. It was very nip and tuck. But I said from about round 5, 6, 7 onwards, you'll see Liam Paro start to grow into the fight and start to get to Montana, and he'll probably be defensively astute enough to be able to get through the fight, but he'll end up losing like on a UD or a majority decision. That was my prediction, but Liam Paro did one better. He showed that the power is there and the shot selection's there, and maybe after the Baranchik fight, because also let's not forget Montana Love, he took some real big shots in that fight. So maybe the punch resistance dropped after that. Maybe he is no longer good at the 140 weight, especially blowing the weight the fight after. Maybe he has trouble making it. Maybe the resistance is gone because he's been shaky in his last few fights. So yeah, I don't know what happens next for him, but big up to Liam Paro. Look, them Aussie boys are, they're no joke. And it's mad. You got man like Montana Love just getting beat up by our Australian brethren, one after the other. They might end up putting him in next with Brock Jarvis, or maybe Brock Jarvis can do the hat trick. Let's see. But yeah, not really much more I can say. Is like I feel bad because I actually liked Montana after the fight he had with Baranchik. I thought he had something about him, but that might have been his flash in the pan moment. So we'll see. We're getting towards the end now, so Just want to go into some of the comments. So Bigsy Biggs says, uh, sad about this. Love had a lot of potential. I still believe he does. I don't know how much potential he's got. I think he is what he is at this stage, but he can still be in some good fights. But I just don't think it's going to be with Matchroom. I think he's going to end up a free agent. Philip Answer says, I gotta say, Montana Love is a scumbag. I feel like Montana is one of those fighters who believe that you haven't come from the same rough background that he comes from. You just can't beat him. I mean, there's a lot of guys like that. But having said that, a lot of these guys don't realize you're not built as tough as them man from Australia and New Zealand. You know what they got to contend with, like on a day-to-day basis. Like there's literally killers left, right, and center, and most of them ain't humans. Spiders, ants, like scorpions, worms, like the amount of different things that can kill you in Australia. You got crocodiles that just walk in the house like they own it. I mean, you've got to be a tough person to come from them kind of countries and live and survive. So as far as I'm concerned, the only place that's even remotely close to that in America will be like maybe Arizona or maybe Texas, like in those deep in the heat, sort of those really hot heated parts of the country. But outside of that, yeah, like when your most feared opponent is not another human being, but it's a creature that's been put on this earth, that you're tough. So I'm not picking a fight with the Australians. I'm not picking a fight with the New Zealanders, especially if they're of Samoan or Maori bloodline. Leave me alone. Like, whatever you want, that's you. I ain't got time for it. Even if I win, I'ma lose. Them situations. That's how I feel. No one could tell me differently. Um, Alex also says not everyone can live up to their potential. Totally right. Um, Big Seal, I hear that. Just a pity. Bruce Kai says Montana Love same letdown and hype train as Josh Kelly or worse. Uh, I would say slightly better than Josh Kelly, only because his level of competition was better. Or at least his best win is better than Josh Kelly's best win. That's what I would say. So I feel like he's not quite on that level, but in terms of a letdown, I mean, boy, untouchable. Thank you for coming through. Sorry I'm late. I'm gonna have to watch this on the back now. Don't worry about all of that. I just appreciate that you're here. Bigsy says he's worse. Alex says I'd say worse, but it might be recency bias. I hear that. Thought he'd be champion by now or something. I mean, 140's got some mad guys in there. So boy, and you man are done for. Kangaroos are knocking out grown men in Australia. Exactly. As I said, from your biggest opponent isn't even another human being. You are tough. So anyone from, just because you're from the States or from a hood and you think that, you're on level, they should have known better. Anyone, if you've ever watched Crocodile Dundee, you know that them man are built different. Like, leave them Australians alone. They know, they know how to scrap. They know how to survive, and they're just tough. Like, leave them. It's all. Don't talk it, because when you can't back it up, you're gonna look dumb. That's how I look at it. But yeah, moving on. Last couple fights. So before we get to the main one, which everyone obviously wants to talk about, have to talk about Andy Cruz Gomez and Giovanni Strafford. Now look, there's no real big technical breakdown for me to go into, purely because I mean I could do, but it's the levels between the two guys were, there was so much of a disparity between them. It doesn't even make sense to really do the technical breakdown. What I will say, the footwork, the footwork has always been A1, and the fact that he's able to employ sharp pivots, sharp angles, sorry, in the actual pocket. He's able to do it in the pocket and angle off of his opponents and work at that range. To me, it's incredible settings. It really is impressive to watch. And when he was on the inside, even though the shots were coming back, he was on the inside. His transition from offense back to defense, back to offense in the pocket was something special to behold. Now, again, I know there was levels in there, and maybe against like a better opponent, a better quality of opponent, that might not end up being the same. But when you look at it, you say to yourself, no, like from the natural makings are there. You say to yourself, yeah, this guy is a different level. Now, I've seen a lot of people say they're worried that he might not have the punch power in the pro game. But ultimately, I mean, let's look at it. He got his opponent out of there in 3 rounds. Yeah, he didn't officially drop him with any shots, but a lot of fighters actually, if you look at a lot of them, beat up their opponents via accumulation more than one punch, devastating knockout power. But when you're as skilled as he is, I don't feel like the punch power is going to be an issue because more time than not, you're gonna you're gonna overwhelm and outland the person to the point that they're just gonna get beaten to submission anyway. Lomachenko is sort of like that. Alexander Usyk was like that a lot earlier in his career. Obviously, he did have a lot of one punch knockouts as well. Tony Bellew and not Glavatsky, the guy he fought just before him, Tabisu Machuna as well, and some of the earlier guys. Yeah, you do get those sort of those one punches, but generally it's just about keeping on the inside, wearing them down, making them think, getting them tired, and basically just taking them out by accumulation. He done that. He landed 60% of his punches. Those kind of numbers are unheard of in professional boxing. So when you look at that, they a lot of them say if you land more than 40% of your power punches, the majority of the time it ends in a stoppage. Well, if he's landing 60% of his punches in general, regardless of whether he's got the hardest punch or not, doesn't matter. The person's getting stopped. That's basically how it goes. Now, yeah, I mean, it was to me a great performance. I thought his first performance was really really good, and I thought this one was even better. Now, was the level of competition better or worse than the first one? Not sure. I think they might have been about even. And ultimately, I know what they're doing at the moment is just getting him in front of a couple of Mexican guys because that's a style that you don't really see a lot in the amateur game. So get him in with a couple of sort of tough, durable Mexicans early, just so he understands that style. So then when he gets to that world level in and around his weight class, that's not going to be something he's got to worry about because all the other styles he's seen in the amateurs. But because you don't get a lot of Mexicans boxing in the amateurs for that long, especially in those lower weight divisions, this is where you kind of get to it now. So yeah, ultimately amazing performance. Like I said, brilliant to watch. And if you haven't seen it, I'm sure you have. But if you haven't, definitely go and watch that because it was a it was a special thing to behold, and it helped the flow of the card as well. You had the Bridges Yoshida fight, which was 10. It was 10 rounds, but it was 10 rounds of pure action. This one stopped in three, nice and quick. Then you get to the next fight, stopped in six. There was just a nice little flow, nothing really outstayed. It's welcome, So I enjoyed it, and I'm sure a lot of you guys did as well. And as Alex says here, as Conor McGregor said, precision beats power, timing. Precision beats power, timing beats speed. Exactly. Well, that's slightly incorrect. He goes, that's a big advantage of an elite amateur background. The one thing I will say about that, timing doesn't beat speed. Timing beats speed without purpose or uneducated speed. Because if you've got a lot of speed, but but obviously you've got a good IQ as well, your speed will kill timing at any point because you know how to deliver it. But speed that's just speed for speed's sake, yeah, timing will always get you with that. Um, Big up to Danny for Fight Fan TV. Smash the likes. Yeah, I can't see what the like counter is like at the moment, but I do hope that you guys are enjoying this solo effort tonight. And yeah, would appreciate if you guys can sort of smash the like button. And Fidel Tuwaldi says Andy Cruz looks like Lomachenko 2.0. Let's see if that's still the case when he fights top fighters. Again, that's what we have to wait for. So all the flash, all the skills, everything, it doesn't mean anything if it can't be executed to the, sort of to the higher level. But we know that the tools are there. And at the end of the day, he's faced a who's who in the amateurs and, beat them all. And most Cuban fighters do very well in the pro game. They just can't sell. They're not massive draws because they don't really have a following. But you will find in the lower weights, especially, a lot of them end up becoming champions. Philip answer, Eddie and Keyshawn was funny. That was a very funny exchange. Bruce Kai, Cruz made Strafford look like a pub fighter when Strafford made Tennyson look average. He's special. Exactly. Um, I agree. Um, Now, finally, moving to the main event. Devin the Dream Haney versus Regis Rougarou Prograis. I feel like I could take a little bit of a a little bit of flowers, a little bit of credit on this one because I did say numerous times Devin Haney at 135 is a compromise fighter. Now I understand why he stayed down there so long. And yeah, I understand also some people can have the arguments that he was maybe trying to weight bully people or just trying to use his size to be the bigger guy in the ring. But that still didn't stop the fact that he had to make that weight. And as we all saw, every single time he made that weight from about 2019 onwards, it took its toll. A bit more power went, a bit more, I won't say resistance because he wasn't really getting hit like that, but you could see that there was, that there was no strength, there was nothing really that I always said, look, when it comes to sort of 140, 147 is when you're going to see the strength come back. I said you'll see a little bit of 140, but I feel like, not saying he's ever going to be a Julian Jackson or some mad knockout artist like Terence Crawford, but when he gets to like 140, 147, the power is going to come back and you're going to start seeing more knockouts again. I believe at 140, at the moment he's found that sweet spot, but I know he's not going to be there for much longer because as we heard, he had to strip down to make the weight of 140 for this one. So there's absolutely no chance he was going to make 135 again. But those extra £5, we saw how much of a difference the performance had. A lot of people have said that Devin is a runner. He's just jab and grab, and he's a boring fighter. I've very rarely seen him in boring fights. The most boring fight he ever had, in my opinion, was the first Cambosis one, and it wasn't even boring. It was just that he was too good for Cambosis. That's in my personal opinion. He was too good for him. He had the just basically his skill set and his qualities and attributes were just of a higher level than what Cambosis had. So it just made the fight seem boring because Cambosis couldn't really do anything. And whereas he never really tried to step on the gas, step on the pace at any point, you then said, okay, yeah, it was a bit uninspiring, maybe because there was no knockout at the end of such domination. Second fight was a lot more competitive, but it was still a very comprehensive. Whereas maybe Haney got an 11-1, maybe 11-1, 10-2 in the first fight. It was probably more of a 10-2, 9-3 in the second, but it was still a comprehensive beating. And then in the Loma fight, that fight was far from boring either, regardless of who you think won, how you think that fight played out. As far as I'm concerned, he's never been a boring fighter. I always thought that was an unfair criticism of Devin Haney. Now we get to this fight. No one can say that this one was boring. He in the first round, he was, both him and Regis, they were both fencing, trying to sort of create angles, and you could see Devin was respectful and responsible about the power. Regis was trying to invest to the body, and he actually had some decent success with the body, and he was holding center ring as well, which basically was a good move for him because what it meant was that Devin had to then basically use his legs and move while Regis could kind of keep his legs fresh. So in that first round, you could see that he was a bit more of the general, but both of them were landing a similar amount of punches. But I feel like Devin had more head punches, so we know that sort of scoring to the head is a lot more is viewed a lot more successfully than scoring to the body, unless obviously the body shot ends up folding you. So I gave Devin the first round, but I even put an X. It was a very, very close one. You could kind of go either way. It was a very close round, but I just edged it to Devin with a little bit more accuracy, especially up top. But from the second round, you could see Devin started to get his timing at this point, and he started to understand where the trajectory was coming from that southpaw lead hand of Regis and how he could get around it. And before the fight, you saw him and his dad in the changing rooms working on where the right hand is going to go and where you need to go to be able to get your jab coming through it. And I thought that they'd been working that and they'd been drilling that, and it was just a very it was a very competent it was a very sort of competent and strategic game plan. And I'm sure that Ben Davison and Lee Wiley probably had some stuff to do because I know they do some of the analytics for him as well. So yeah, it was just a really really composed second round, and he started to find that timing. Then in the third round, Regis actually started that round very well. And you felt like he was starting to invest. He was trying to invest in the body as well. He didn't catch, I think he maybe caught Devin with one glancing shot up top, but he was investing to the body. He was starting to step forward, and you thought, oh, okay, he's trying to pressure Devin now. So there could be some issues there. But then Devin was able to switch angles. He started to see where Regis was placing his feet when he was starting to move, and he started spinning around the foot, landing that lead hand, and then trying to come with the uppercut. And I think he managed to catch him with one in that round as well. Then when he saw Regis, who was like he was rocking on his feet to try and set his power so that he could launch. He looked like he was ready to launch like a sweeping right hook from his southpaw stance. But Devin caught him, saw it, and then went straight down the pipe. As we know, what's deemed the southpaw killer, the straight right on the chin, boom, Regis straight down to the ground, but manages to spin back up, get back up on his feet. Like, okay, cool, that's it, you got me. But you could see from, I think, the second or just before that in the third, you could actually see that Devin had broken Regis's nose. Regis's nose, like there was a big arc in it from just before that punch, so you could see that that's where Devin started to sort of get that work in. And you can see, so there's power now. There's not only is there's power, he's able to set up the shots, and he's able to, and because Regis is just too slow for him, he's actually able to sit down on shots and stay in the range of the shot a bit more before actually then having to move out. But the speed differentials between the two was just like night and day. It was crazy. Regis didn't have an answer, and from that point on, he stopped actually coming forward and trying to pressure Devin, because in the second and the third round, he did quite well doing that. And you thought, okay, if he gets to him, he can start just working him and wearing him down for later on. But at that point, he stopped. At that point, everything was about trying to counter what Devin was doing, as opposed to trying to walk him down and sort of pressure him and make him uncomfortable. And then from there, Devin just had the range. He was just unloading everything from the lead uppercut to the backhand uppercut, that straight right, um, spinning round to that right hook to that jab, the spearing jab. He didn't even use the jab as much as he normally does. It was just literally he was just in full control, and there was like at that point, there's nothing that Regis could do. It gets to the sixth round, and we see Devin buckle Regis hard with a sweeping right hook that catches Regis. I think it catches him on the just at the top right here by the side of his chin, and Regis is wobbled, but Devin doesn't jump in. And I look at that and I'm thinking, even if you don't think he's ready to go, like if and this is obviously me, at that point, I wouldn't have rushed in, but I would have tried to get another one of those. Another one. While he's a bit unsteady, yeah, he might be clear-eyed, but he's unsteady. At that point, he can't even swing a shot back at you because he hasn't got his weight underneath him properly. So I would have maybe just tried to go for another one, tried to go for another one. But Devin was very disciplined. He stuck to the game plan. His dad said, "No, don't rush it yet. Just keep working. We'll break him down and we'll get to him later on." Gets to now the ninth round. Yes, the ninth round where Devin catches it. Where Regis tries to stumble in. Devin spins round, catches him, and it looks like it. To be fair, hit him to the back of the head, but it was definitely behind the ear. Stuns the equilibrium. As soon as Regis sort of lifts up, bang, side of the jaw, the neck, everything, and Regis is wobbly again. But again, Devin doesn't jump in. And this point, I'm like, nah, Devin, you could like you've got this guy ready to go. Just pressure him. I'm not saying be reckless. I understand you know, he's still powerful. And his dad even said, look, he's gonna stop trying to come forward. He's gonna try and make you come to him because that's the only chance he's got. Don't give him the opportunity. And Regis's team actually said that in the corner as well. So I understand that they was like, look, the game plan is the game plan because that's what he's gonna try and do. That's the only chance he's got to win this fight. Don't give him a chance. But at that point, I just felt like you can afford to be in the pocket for one extra punch, maybe two extra, but maybe one punch, spin, throw another one, then get out because he's not landing with anything. He hasn't got his feet underneath him. You can see everything that's coming. Is extremely slow at this point. Like just one more, see how it works, and I would truly believe he'd get a stoppage. That's what I predicted, that he would get an 11th round stoppage, and up until the ninth to 10th round, I felt very comfortable that this fight's gonna end, especially when you saw the ref going over to his corner a couple times. Like, look, is he okay? Is he? And they're like, yeah, he's fine. Look, I mean, he can't be taking those punches like he needs to. And they're like, okay, we got it. And then they're like, look, he's gonna stop this fight. Like, do you want this fight stopped? He's like, hell no. But he just couldn't do anything. Me personally, I would have pulled him out from about the ninth round or from either the 10th. I know, look, you're 6 minutes away, but that 6 minutes of extra punishment at that point, you don't need to take. You look at his, like, you look at Regis's face. It's a, it's not bloodied, but it's bruised, it's battered, broken nose. He's like, he doesn't even have the Hail Mary shot at this point. You might as well have saved him from himself. I know that he ain't gonna want the KO loss on the record because no one's gonna check to see how the fight got stopped. They're just gonna see, one KO when they look on box rec. But those last two rounds could have potentially done extra, especially when after the bout you've got Regis saying, no, he's good and he's got power. Like, I didn't think he could hit like that. He's got power. It's not one punch knockout, but he's powerful. He's got that. He's so you gave that's a 6 minutes of extra damage. Now, luckily for him, Devin didn't really throw a huge amount more in the 12th. He still got in with enough, but it wasn't enough to whereby like he's taking a sustained beating. But again, that's still more punches than he needed to take. And if you listen to Regis, as much as he talks, he's very coherent when he talks, but you can hear he kind of repeats himself a lot. I don't know if sometimes that's the brain thinking, wait, did I say that? Or maybe I didn't say it. Let me say it just in case. Like, I think I wouldn't, he's not punchy or punch drunk or anything like that, but he just has that, to me, he has that kind of mode to him. And I feel like he could have been saved from himself, in my personal opinion. But that being said, 12 rounds of dominance, Devin Haney's career best performance, without a shadow of a doubt. You can see the difference in him at 140. By the time he goes to 147, yes, he's not gonna have any size advantages over anyone at 147, but he's probably gonna have the speed advantage and he's gonna be well seasoned because I reckon by the time he gets to 147, a lot of the 140 guys are going to be at the 147. Guys like Boots is going to be at 154 or 160 because he's going to 160 sooner or later. Terrence is gone, Errol's gone, Danny's gone. Obviously, Sean Porter, he's retired. Ugas ain't going to be there. So you get someone like Barrios. He's not going to worry about, but he wants Barrios now. And Barrios is gone. I think he's a WBC interim champion at the moment. So um, as soon as Terrence goes up and eventually vacates, he's going to end up as the next champ. So yeah, he's got those options, but you can just see from 135 to 140, clearly different fighter. And yeah, I feel like I said, I feel like I got a little bit of vindication because I had been telling people as soon as he moves up, you're gonna start to see some of that punch power again. So I'm gonna go through the chat, have a quick see who's been saying what's. So Danny said, "Come on, Devin the Dream Haney." Yeah, Bruce Kai. Base deserves flowers here. I was a I was doubtful he could perform like that, but his stock has risen massively and Shakur's has plummeted. Him versus Tio or Mateus next would be amazing. I totally agree. I personally would. I'd want to see the Tio fight first because they're from the same amateur background. They got the same age, and I think their styles, even though the Matthias fight stylistically, if Devin has got the engine to get through it, he could just literally stay on the outside and make that sort of a hit and move, a hit and run type of event. While I do think that ultimately, like Matthias will get to the inside, but Matthias, he doesn't throw unless he's on the inside or unless he's close to you. So if Devin can keep range, that's a bit of a different fight as opposed to the Tio fight, which I think is more athlete versus athlete. But even the Ryan fight, I'm happy to see that one as well. Um, but yeah, I ultimately I want him against all the champions. The Rolly fight, yep, give us that. I'd like to see him fight Rolly just to get that belt off him. But if Rolly loses to Ryan, fight Ryan. If O'Hara Davis ends up getting the belt, fight O'Hara Davis. Just get a couple belts, at least unify before you move up to 147. You don't have to go undisputed if you don't want, but unify. You man are done for, yeah. Haney looked like he had a boulder at 135. Yep. Um, fight fan. And look at Devin on the scales; he looked fantastic compared to Wayne's at 135. Exactly, like an actual 140 plus fighter along. Yep, that's realistically Devin. If they was doing same day weigh-ins, Devin's not even competing at 140. He's a 147 pounder. He might be able to get to 140, but yeah, that's the lowest he'd be able to get to. But he probably wouldn't be able to function properly. I actually believe, funny enough, while we're talking, before I let everyone go, I actually think that they should, if they don't go back to same day weigh-ins, I think that everyone who is a licensed boxer should have to submit their weight at least 3 times a year. Maybe, or if you're not, if you're active, then maybe 2 times, but you should have to submit it 3 to 4 times a year. And whatever weight you are at that point, you're not allowed to compete more than 14 pounds below that. Say maybe 14 to 17 pounds. Maybe for the lower weights, you say it's a bit less, like maybe 10 or 11, 12. But then when you start getting up to like middleweight, light heavyweight, and sort of those types, I feel like you should only be able to 14. Maybe when you get to, obviously when it's heavyweight, it's whatever. But cruiserweight, maybe, yeah, but something like that, just so when you say, so that you can't, number one, get people quote unquote weight bullying, but then also there will be less, I feel like there will be less injuries, brain injuries, and things like dehydration and whatnot, because people aren't, basically in fat camps for the entirety of their bouts, using steam rooms and saunas just to get extra pounds off and drain themselves of fluid to make weight. Like 14 pounds, I think is a sensible thing. So then at that point, you'll get a lot of people competing at the weight classes they're supposed to be competing at. And I feel like you get a lot more even matchups rather than one guy that's maybe 130 and, on scales, but then he goes up and he's all of a sudden he's 159. And then you got another guy that's, 130 on the scales, but because he's closer to that weight naturally, he only goes up to like 137 or something like that. I just think, to me personally, that's how I do it. I know they probably never would, but that's an idea you could have to make the sport a bit safer. Alex says Devin tamed and disciplined the Rougarou this fight. Glad we are gonna see Devin get even better. I think he can become a two-time undisputed if he stays at 140. I think he can as well. Matthias is gonna be his hardest task because again, it's not just a case of it, because you're gonna have to move a lot. And even if you can keep him off of you with the shots, he will get in eventually. And while he's not the biggest puncher, but he doesn't load up, and he doesn't even have to. He doesn't even have to be in a punching position. Like everything just literally comes from the arms with him. But every punch hurts. He's not the most devastating puncher, but you feel every single punch, to the point, as we've seen, a lot of his opponents are like, I don't want no more of this. This is long. So that's what Devin's got to contend with. But again, if you look at it, he's a natural. You can see that he's a guy. He walks around at like 165, 168 pounds. Realistically, 147 is calling his name. Like he might be at 140 until maybe the end of 2024 max. And then I think he'll have to move up after that. Because remember, what we're forgetting is he should have moved up to 140 3 4 years ago. So his body's already now playing catch up. Now it's not being starved of all of those nutrients it had to be starved of for the 135. It's just going to play catch up, and it's going to shoot past 140. And I feel like yeah, it was already difficult for him to make 140 this one. So I don't see him sticking around or being able to stick around much longer. I think he'll listen to his body now, and I think he knows that 147 is his division up until he goes towards like his early 30s, and then I think he'll end up at 154. I think that's where he's going to top out as a competitor. But Philip answered, Devin may not have had power at 135, but he did rough all their faces up. Yep, you could tell sometimes it's not that's when you know someone's got that stinging shots, because no one left unscathed in his fights. He very rarely looked hurt or beat up or damaged, but everyone wore the battles of the wounds of war on their faces when they faced Devin. So you're quite right there, Phil. Alex, that was a perfect display of boxing power. Dropped him once and cracked Regis and wobbled him a couple times throughout. Perfect precision and distance management. Exactly. When Devin landed those three right hands back to back to back, he was trying to put Regis out. If he'd have carried on, he probably would have got the stoppage. Fight fan. I think it's better Devin didn't stop him, as that way he'd be able to break Shakur Stevens. He was able to break Shakur Stevens' record, but did it in a positive way. Well, no, but the thing is, Danny, that's no, because it's the record isn't Shakur's. The record is De Los Santos's. De Los Santos landed the least amount of punches in a 12-round fight, but I think the two of them altogether threw the least amount. Devin threw Regis threw 363 punches and Devin threw 367. So he threw four punches more than Regis in the entire fight, but he just landed a lot more. He landed 25% more of his punches than Regis did. So that's just the situation there. But no, a stoppage would have been an icing on the cake. Then we really would have been talking about fighter of the year contender, because even though Crawford dismantled Spence masterfully, he wasn't as dominant against Spence as as Haney was against Regis, and Inoue wasn't as dominant over um, Fulton as he was, because those guys had some modicums of success, like Regis had none whatsoever. So, but yeah, I hear that. Um, right, Devin showed Shakur how it's done. Right, what's the issue between Devin Paulie and also Tim Bradley? I'm not 100% sure. Um, Tim Bradley, it might be because obviously he's on top rank and Devin is not, and Shakur's over on top rank, so it might be trying to defend him. Maybe he doesn't like the way how Devin sort of had the top rank deal and then left, so maybe he's got issues there. As for Paulie, um, I mean, Paulie has issues with everyone sooner or later, so who knows? um, Conor Ben versus Haney is the fight to make at 147. Similar body dimensions and speed, but one is a boxer, the other a high volume pressure fighter. Fantastic fight. Somebody getting slept. I mean, that would be a really good fight. Um, I don't know if Devin is going to take any fights at 147 that don't have a belt attached to them at the moment, because for him the belts equate money. But that being said, that's one of those fights where I guess if you do it in the States, he can probably sell out San Francisco with that. But if you do it over here, I think you could definitely get if not, you could probably sell out the O2, or get very close to a sellout there, for an event like that. It just depends on how much money Devin would want. But yeah, yeah, Body's playing catch up with his head. All right. I want to see Devin in three more fights at 140 before moving to 147. Lopez, Matias, and Garcia last if he looks better and is deserving of the fight. Um, Philip Paulie just talks. Fair enough. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, look, that's pretty much the end of this one. I hope I've kept you suitably entertained. I hope I was fairly detailed, and or I gave you some of the breakdowns that you wanted. I can understand if there wasn't as many, but there was a lot of fights that we had to get through. So yeah, I'm gonna leave it there. Um, and just for everyone, obviously, for you to know, BaseDaKID, the hardcore casual. That's my YouTube channel. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe to that. Also, I'm on Instagram. Don't go there for boxing though. Just BaseDaKID. I hardly even upload, but I'm just on there active, like liking other people's stuff. And then on Twitter, it's X, whichever one. It's B_A_S_E, but you can just type in BaseDaKID, and I am the first one that shows up on the timeline. So please do that. If if you want to sort of check me out on there, I'm a lot more interactive on the boxing Twitter space there. While I've got everyone here, I am at episode 200 of the Hardcore Casual on my channel. So on Thursday, there will be a live stream. Every 100th episode, we do a live stream. So I'm gonna set that up soon. And it will probably go for about an hour, probably from about 8:45 to 9:45 type time. But yeah, we'll sort of see how that goes, and then I'll be able to talk through any topics that I haven't discussed since last week Saturday. So yeah, make sure you tune in. Make sure you sort of set the reminders will be there. But yeah, just make sure you're subscribed to my channel. You'll get that. I'll post it in the community tab as well. But for right now, I want to say thank you very much for everyone joining in. Chris Collymore, I see you. Thank you very much for coming through. Um, Bigsy Biggs, Peace Space, always a pleasure. It's always a pleasure for you to be in the comments as well. I appreciate every time you're here. Thank you. Alex, you did well for the solo show base, very educational, and it was well done. I appreciate you. Bruce, we see your like space out of control, brother. Right, cool. Fidel, thank you very much. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's it. I will catch you next week. Hopefully, Tony will be back and be feeling healthy and good. But until then, peace.